I, 32F, lost my husband Mason 8 months ago in a car accident. The pain is still fresh, and I miss him every single day. We were married for 6 wonderful years and lived in a house his grandfather built back in 1952. The house has been in their family for 3 generations, and my husband inherited it from his father 5 years ago. It's a beautiful 2-story home with a wraparound porch and a large backyard where Mason and I spent countless evenings together. Mason and I met in college. He was studying architecture, and I was pursuing art. We clicked instantly, and after graduation, we started dating. 2 years later, we got married in the backyard of this very house. Mason's father was still alive then, and he was so happy to see his son getting married in the place where he himself had grown up. Early in our marriage, Mason and I tried to have children. We went through 5 painful rounds of IVF over 3 years, but none were successful. Each failure was devastating, but Mason stood by my side through it all. He would hold me when I cried and remind me that we were a family, with or without children. Eventually, we accepted that maybe having biological children wasn't in our future, and we focused on building our life together. My sister-in-law Alice, 35F, lives about an hour away with her husband Tom and their 3 kids, ages 10, 8, and 5. Alice never approved of Mason inheriting the house instead of her. When their father passed away 5 years ago, she created a huge drama about it. She argued that since she had children who could carry on the family legacy, she deserved the house more. But my father-in-law had made his decision clear in his will. The house would go to Mason because he was the one who helped renovate it and took care of their parents in their final years. Mason and I poured our hearts into this house. We spent weekends fixing up the old wooden floors, painting walls, and updating the kitchen while keeping its vintage charm. Mason, being an architect, designed beautiful built-in bookshelves for the living room, and I painted murals in what we hoped would one day be a nursery. When that dream didn't come true, we turned it into a cozy reading room instead. After Mason's death, I continued living in our house. Every corner holds memories of our life together, from the height Masons on the kitchen door frame where we measured each other every anniversary to the garden we planted together. The house is the only real connection I have left to him. Alice and my mother-in-law Ellen started visiting more frequently after the funeral. At first, I was grateful for their presence, thinking they were trying to be supportive during my grief. I was wrong. Last week, Alice came over with Ellen. They sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where Mason and I had countless morning coffees together. They told me they thought it would be best if I sold the house to Alice at a discounted price. Their reasoning made me sick to my stomach. According to them, since I'm still young at 32, I could start fresh somewhere else. They said Alice's kids deserved to grow up in their family home, and Ellen even suggested that since I couldn't give them grandchildren, the least I could do was ensure their existing grandchildren got to live in the family house. The suggestion blindsided me. This house legally belongs to me. Mason made sure of that before he passed. He knew how his sister was and updated his will specifically to state that the house would go to me. When I refused their proposal, Alice became furious. She accused me of being selfish, saying I was keeping a family home away from actual family members. She told me her oldest son was devastated that he couldn't live in his grandfather's house, completely ignoring the fact that she had never shown any interest in living here before Mason's death. Ellen, my mother-in-law, sided with Alice completely. While claiming she still loved me as a daughter-in-law, she hit me with the age-old blood is thicker than water argument. She said the house should stay with someone who could pass it down to the next generation. Then she crossed the line that I can never forgive. She suggested that my inability to have children was a sign that I wasn't meant to keep the house. I was shaking with anger and hurt when I asked them to leave. Alice didn't go quietly. She threatened to contest the will, claiming she would prove that I had manipulated Mason into leaving me the house. That night, Ellen called me crying, saying I was tearing the family apart and that Mason would have wanted his nieces and nephews to grow up in the family home. The truth is, Mason and I had discussed this exact scenario. He knew Alice would try something like this after he was gone. The night he updated his will, he told me specifically that he wanted me to have the house because I was his family too. He knew how much it meant to me and how much love and work we had put into it together. We spent 5 years renovating it room by room, making it our own while respecting its history. I have no intention of selling, but Alice and Ellen have been spreading their version of events to the entire extended family. They're telling everyone I'm being selfish and destroying the family legacy. I've been getting daily messages from Mason's cousins, aunts, and uncles, all trying to convince me to do the right thing. Some are gentle about it, saying they understand my attachment but family should come first. Others are more aggressive, accusing me of disrespecting Mason's memory. Yesterday, things escalated when Tom, Alice's husband, showed up at my workplace. I work at a local art gallery, and he came in during my shift. He tried to talk to me about the house, saying they could offer me market value now, but they wouldn't be so generous if this went to court. His presence was so intimidating that I had to ask security to escort him out. My coworkers were concerned, and my boss told me to let her know if anything like this happens again. I know I'm legally in the right, I've already spoken to a lawyer who confirmed this. But their constant harassment is wearing me down. I've started documenting everything just in case they do try to take legal action. My friends think I should sell just to have peace, but this house is all I have left of my life with Mason. Every morning, I have coffee on the porch where we used to sit together. Every evening, I tend to the garden we planted. This isn't just about property, it's about preserving the life and love we built together. Update 1: I want to thank everyone who offered support on my last post. The situation has gotten worse in ways I never expected. 2 weeks ago, Alice and my mother-in-law Ellen found out something that Mason and I had kept relatively private. We had been planning to adopt before his death. We started the adoption process about 6 months before the accident. After going through years of failed IVF treatments, we had finally come to terms with not having biological children and were excited about growing our family through adoption. We had completed most of the home study process, and were working with an agency that specialized in domestic adoptions. Mason was so excited about becoming a dad. He had already started sketching plans to convert his old home office into a child's bedroom. After he died, I couldn't continue with the process. The thought of raising a child alone, especially while dealing with my own grief, felt overwhelming. I put everything on hold and hadn't told many people about our plans. I found out they discovered this information in the worst possible way. Ellen had access to Mason's email account because she used to help him manage some online banking and investment accounts when he was busy with work. Instead of respecting his privacy after death, she went through years of his personal emails. She found our conversations about adoption and shared them with Alice and other family members. They're now using these private emails against me in the most hurtful way possible. Alice has been telling everyone that my willingness to adopt proves I'm not truly committed to the family legacy. She's been saying things like, if I really cared about the family, I would have kept trying for a biological child instead of planning to bring in an outsider. She even had the audacity to suggest that Mason only agreed to adoption because I manipulated him, and that he wasn't thinking clearly when he made his will. The emails Ellen found included discussions about possibly selling the house if we needed more space after adopting. We were just exploring all our options at the time, talking about whether we might need a different layout or a house closer to better schools. Alice is now twisting these conversations to claim that Mason never intended for me to keep the house long-term. She's deliberately ignoring the parts where Mason wrote about wanting to make these decisions together as a family, and how he wanted to raise our child in his family home. After discovering Ellen had access to Mason's accounts, I spent hours changing every password I could think of: email, social media, banking, everything. But I'm still worried about what other private information they might have accessed or what else they might try to use against me. Their invasion of our privacy didn't stop there. They've been systematically turning our neighbors against me. Last week, I found out they'd been going door to door, telling neighbors that I was planning to sell the house to developers who would destroy the historic character of the neighborhood. Our elderly neighbor Mrs. Peterson, who has lived next door for 40 years and was like a grandmother to Mason, now avoids eye contact when I wave to her. She used to bring me casseroles after Mason died, but now she barely speaks to me. Alice has also started a campaign to make it look like I'm neglecting the house. She's been taking photos of the property and posting them on Facebook, claiming I'm letting a family heirloom fall into disrepair. The photos are completely misleading. She took close-up shots of some peeling paint on the porch. We're in the middle of repainting it, but she conveniently didn't mention that. She photographed the dug-up flower beds where I'm planning to plant Mason's favorite lilies, making it look like I'm destroying the garden. She even took pictures through our windows when she thought I wasn't home. Everything came to a head last Saturday. I came home from grocery shopping to find Alice and Ellen in my backyard with their phones out, taking more pictures. When I confronted them, they claimed they were just documenting the property's condition for family records. I lost my temper and told them they were trespassing. They refused to leave, saying they had a right to be there since it was their family home. I called the police. The police came and escorted them off my property. They gave me information about how to file for a restraining order if the harassment continues. Now Alice and Ellen are telling everyone that I'm mentally unstable and that grief has made me paranoid. They're saying I need help and shouldn't be living alone in such a big house. I've started keeping a detailed log of every interaction with them. My lawyer advised me to save screenshots of Alice's Facebook posts and keep copies of any messages they send. She thinks they might try to use the adoption emails and house maintenance photos to challenge Mason's will. I feel like I'm living under constant surveillance in my own home. Every time I leave the house, I worry about what they might do while I'm gone. Update 2: After my last update, I spent a weekend cleaning out the attic. Mason and I had always planned to organize it, but never got around to it. While going through old boxes, I found something that changed everything: A stack of letters between Mason and his father from 5 years ago, when they were deciding what to do with the house. These letters revealed a shocking truth: Alice had been offered the house first. Not only was she offered it, but their father had actually wanted her to have it initially. He wrote about how he hoped his grandchildren would grow up in the house. But Alice turned it down. The letter showed a series of conversations where Alice complained about the house being too old, needing too many repairs, and being too far from her children's private school. There were detailed exchanges about the renovation costs. Their father had offered to help financially with the repairs, but Alice didn't want to deal with the hassle. She wrote that she preferred her modern house with its open floor plan and updated amenities. In one letter, she even said the house held too many old memories and she wanted to build her own family memories in a new place. The most revealing letter was one where their father expressed his disappointment in Alice's decision. He wrote about how the house wasn't just about massive value or modern conveniences, it was about family history and memories. That's when he decided to offer it to Mason, who had always loved the house and helped maintain it even before it was his. I sat on this information for a few days, unsure what to do. Then I decided to confront Alice. I invited her over, and for once, she came alone. When I showed her the letters, she broke down completely. Through tears, she admitted everything. She said watching Mason and me transform the house from the old, dated place she remembered into a beautiful modern home while keeping its historic charm made her realize what a mistake she'd made. Alice confessed that seeing how much work we put into the house, and how much its value had increased because of our renovations, made her regret her decision deeply. She claimed she didn't think it was fair that her one bad choice should prevent her children from having their rightful inheritance. According to her, she deserved a second chance at the house now that she understood its true worth. When I called Ellen to ask about this, she tried to justify why they'd hidden this information. She said they didn't think it was relevant anymore because circumstances had changed. She argued that Alice was in a different place in her life now and could better appreciate the house's value. Ellen even suggested that maybe everything happened the way it did so the house could end up with Alice's children, who would preserve the family legacy. I was so angry about their hypocrisy that I decided to share the truth. I scanned the letters and posted them on Facebook, where Alice had been spreading lies about me. I wrote a detailed post explaining how Alice had rejected the house, only to try to force me out of it years later after all the improvements were made. The extended family's reaction was mixed. Some apologized for pressuring me, admitting they had no idea about Alice's previous rejection of the house. Others accused me of being vindictive by exposing old family matters that should have remained private. A few even suggested that posting the letters proved I was trying to turn the family against Alice. But the truth didn't stop there. Through all this drama, I discovered the real reason behind their sudden interest in the house. Last week, Tom's cousin, who works at their bank, reached out to me. He felt guilty about the situation and wanted me to know the truth. Alice and Tom are in serious financial trouble. Tom's business has been failing for the past year, and they've maxed out their credit cards trying to keep it afloat. They weren't planning to move into the house at all. Their plan was to pressure me into selling it to them at a discounted price, then immediately resell it at massive value to pay off their debts. They'd already been in talks with a real estate agent about listing it. All their talk about family legacy and wanting their children to grow up here was just a manipulation tactic. When I confronted Alice about this, she didn't deny it. Instead, she tried to justify it, saying they were desperate and didn't know what else to do. She actually suggested that by helping them this way, I would be honoring Mason's memory by taking care of his sister. Update 3: Many of you have been asking for an update, so here's what's happened in the last 6 months. After discovering Alice and Tom's financial motives, I decided to go completely no contact with Alice, Tom, and Ellen. I blocked them on all social media platforms and my phone. I instructed my lawyer to handle any communication with them. She sent them a formal cease and desist letter when they tried to spread more rumors about me. The house is still mine, and I've made it clear that's how it's going to stay. After a few suspicious incidents, like finding my garden gate unlocked and seeing unfamiliar cars parked outside for hours, I installed a comprehensive security system. I added cameras covering every entrance, motion sensor lights, and a new alarm system. My neighbors on the other side, a young couple who moved in recently, keep an eye on the house when I'm at work. Alice and Tom's financial situation got worse. They ended up having to sell their house and move into a rental property. Now they're telling everyone that their children are suffering because of me, claiming that if I had helped them, their kids wouldn't have had to change schools and leave their friends behind. Some extended family members still try to make me feel guilty about this, sending messages about how the children cry about missing their old home. I won't lie, sometimes the guilt they try to put on me still hurts. Last week, I ran into Alice's oldest son at the grocery store. He was with his aunt, Tom's sister, and when he saw me, He looked away and moved to the other side of the aisle. It was clear someone had told him I was the reason they had to move. That was tough to handle. But I'm standing firm in my decision. I've started making the house truly mine, something I had hesitated to do while trying to preserve everything exactly as it was when Mason was alive. I converted one of the spare rooms into an art studio, something Mason had always encouraged me to do but I never found the time for. I've been teaching art classes there on weekends to some local kids, and the joy of creating in that space has been healing. The garden has become my sanctuary. I planted Mason's favorite flowers, the ones Alice had photographed and mocked when the beds were freshly dug. Now they're blooming beautifully. I joined a local gardening club and made some new friends who appreciate the history of the house and help me maintain its character while making it my own. Mason's Aunt Catherine, his father's sister, reached out to me a few months ago. She told me she had similar problems with Alice years ago when their mother passed away and left her some family jewelry. According to Catherine, Alice tried to convince everyone that she deserved the jewelry because she would pass it down to her daughters. Catherine has become a wonderful support, sharing stories about Mason's childhood and helping me feel connected to the family history in a positive way. Ellen recently tried to reach out through a family friend, suggesting we try family counseling to heal the rift. I declined. The friend told me Ellen was struggling with losing access to both her children's families, her son through death and her daughter through distance since they moved. Part of me feels sad for her, but I can't forget how she went through Mason's private emails and used them against me. Some extended family members still think I should have sold the house to keep the peace. They say family is more important than property. But this house isn't just property to me, it's where Mason and I built our life together, where we planned our future family, and where I feel closest to him. Mason would have been proud of me for standing up for myself and not giving in to manipulation. I'm at peace with my decisions now. The house feels more like home than ever. I've made new friends who support me, I'm pursuing my art again, and I'm building a life that honors both Mason's memory and my own needs. I won't be making any more updates, this chapter of my life is closed.